She did not cry. She did not raise her voice. She did not even turn around when the door closed behind her. That was the part Denise kept thinking about afterward. Not the look on the hotel manager's face when he realized who she was, not the silence that fell over the lobby like a held breath, not even the headlines that would come the next morning. What stayed with her was the stillness of the woman in the gray wool coat, the way she stood at the reception desk with her worn canvas tote on her shoulder, and her reading glasses pushed up into her hair and absorbed every word thrown at her without flinching. Not because she was weak, because she had already decided that none of it would touch her. Her name was Yolanda Ferris. Most people who mattered in the Canadian technology sector knew that name. Most people standing in the lobby of the Harrow Grand Hotel in downtown Toronto that Tuesday evening did not. The Harrow Grand had been the kind of hotel that understood its own reputation the way old money understands silence. You didn't have to announce it. 42 floors of limestone and glass overlooking Lake Ontario. A concierge desk staffed by people who had memorized the preferences of guests who visited twice a year. A restaurant on the 38th floor where a reservation 6 weeks out was considered fortunate. The hotel had hosted 3 sitting prime ministers, 2 visiting heads of state, and more than one quietly managed celebrity collapse. It was not, in the estimation of its front desk staff, the kind of place where a woman in a gray wool coat and scuffed ankle boots simply walked up to the desk, without a reservation confirmation printed on hotel letterhead. Yolanda had flown in from Vancouver that afternoon. The meeting at Holbrook Capital was at 9 the following morning. She had asked her assistant to book somewhere close, somewhere quiet, and her assistant, thorough, earnest, 24 years old, had booked the Harrow Grand's executive suite for 3 nights, sent the confirmation to Yolanda's phone, and then promptly come down with a severe fever and forgotten to forward the booking reference to the hotel's preferred guest portal. It was a small administrative gap, the kind of thing that gets sorted in 2 minutes with a phone call. Yolanda walked to the desk and set her tote down on the marble counter. She had been traveling since 6 that morning. Her coat smelled faintly of the rain that had caught her between the cab and the terminal in Vancouver. She wasn't thinking about how she looked. She was thinking about the presentation deck she needed to review before 9 o'clock the next day. The man behind the desk, his name badge read Philip W., Guest Relations, glanced up from his screen. He looked at her coat. He looked at the tote bag. He looked at the reading glasses in her hair. Some internal calculation happened behind his eyes, fast and automatic and completely invisible to him. "Can I help you?" he said. Not a question, exactly. More of a threshold. "Yes, I have a reservation. Ferris, Executive Suite 3 nights starting tonight." Philip W. typed. He typed slowly, with the particular deliberateness of someone performing effort. He frowned at the screen. He typed again. "I'm not finding anything under that name. It was booked this morning. There may be an issue with the portal. My assistant was handling it remotely. Can you check under the company name? It would be Ferris Vantage Group." More typing. The frown deepened. "I'm not seeing a corporate account linked to that name either." Yolanda kept her voice level. "Can you try the confirmation number? I have it on my phone." "Of course," Philip said, in a tone that suggested the opposite. She pulled out her phone and read the number aloud. Philip typed it in. There was a pause, long enough that 2 other guests completed their check-ins at the neighboring station. "That confirmation number isn't showing as valid in our system. It was generated this morning through your booking platform. Our system is showing no record of this reservation." Yolanda looked at him for a moment. "All right, if there's been a glitch in the system, I'd like to speak with a manager and get it sorted out. In the meantime, if you have the suite available, I'm happy to rebook directly." Something shifted in Philip's expression. It was not hostility exactly. It was something quieter and more practiced than that. A kind of bureaucratic wall that had the advantage of looking like procedure. "I'm afraid all of our executive suites are fully committed for the next 4 nights. What about standard rooms? We're at capacity. You're fully booked across every category." "I'm afraid so." Behind her, A couple in resort wear was checking in without incident. Yolanda watched them receive their key cards and their welcome packet, and their smile, and their "enjoy your stay." The woman had a Hermes bag the color of burnt orange. The man had a golf tan. They had not produced a printed confirmation. They had given a surname and a credit card, and that had been sufficient. Yolanda turned back to Philip. "I see," she said, and she picked up her tote and walked to the armchairs near the window that looked out over the lake. And she sat down, and she called her assistant's emergency contact, her assistant's husband, and asked him gently to wake her if she was sleeping, because there was a small problem she needed help solving. She was not angry. She was tired, and she was paying attention. Those are different things. The lobby of the Harrow Grand was busy that evening, in the particular way that hotel lobbies are busy. People arriving, people departing, people waiting for other people who were slightly late. A pianist played something indeterminate near the bar. The concierge desk fielded a question about dinner reservations. Bellhops moved luggage across the marble floor, with the efficient silence of people who understand that invisibility is part of the service. One person was watching Yolanda. Her name was Tamsin Foley. She was 31 years old, and she had been with the Harrow Grand for 6 years, which meant she had seen enough of the lobby to know when something was wrong. She worked in the hotel's events coordination office, which sat behind a frosted glass partition near the elevators. And she had been on her way to speak with the concierge about a floral delivery for the following morning's conference when she stopped. She had watched Philip's face during the exchange. She had seen the couple in resort wear check-in without a printed confirmation. She had watched Yolanda sit down in the armchair by the window, with the particular dignity of someone who has decided not to give anyone the satisfaction of a reaction. Tamsin stood at the edge of the lobby for a moment. She thought about the evening she had ahead of her, the floral delivery, the seating chart she still needed to finalize, the fact that it was already 7:30 and she hadn't eaten since noon. She walked to the armchair by the window. "Excuse me," she said. "I work here, in events coordination. I'm not sure what happened at the desk just now, but I want to help if I can. My name is Tamsin." Yolanda looked up at her. She studied her for a moment. The kind of look that doesn't judge, just reads. "Yolanda," she said, "I have a reservation that apparently doesn't exist in your system. Your colleague tells me the hotel is fully booked. I'm trying to resolve it." Tamsin sat down in the chair across from her. "Can I see the confirmation?" Yolanda handed her the phone. Tamsin looked at the number. She looked at the booking details. She pulled out her own work tablet and typed in the confirmation number using a different access level than the front desk system. The reservation appeared immediately. Executive Suite. 3 nights. Paid in full. The system had flagged it as unverified because the portal sync had failed. A known technical issue that the IT department had been meaning to address for 2 months. The reservation was completely valid. It simply hadn't shown up on Philip's screen. Tamsin sat with that for a second. "Your reservation is in the system," she said. "There was a technical error on our end. It's completely valid." She paused. "I'm sorry for the confusion." "Thank you," Yolanda said. There was a quality to her voice that Tamsin couldn't immediately place. Not coldness. Not warmth, exactly. Something else. A precision, a deliberateness. Like every word had been selected from a larger set, and she had chosen these particular ones for a reason. "I'm going to take you to check-in myself," Tamsin said, "and I'm going to make sure this is handled properly." She walked Yolanda to the desk, not to Philip's station, to the station at the far end, where the senior guest relations supervisor, a woman named Deborah, was finishing a call. Deborah sorted it in 4 minutes. She pulled the reservation, she confirmed the suite, she produced the key cards, she apologized twice. Her apology was professional and complete, and it acknowledged the error without quite acknowledging what the error might have been. Yolanda accepted the apology. With the same precision, she accepted everything. She thanked Tamsin. She collected her key cards. She picked up her tote and walked to the elevator. Before the doors closed, she looked at Tamsin once more. "You didn't have to do that," she said. I want you to know I noticed. The doors closed. Tamsin stood in the lobby for a moment. Then, she went to find the floral delivery schedule, because there was still work to do. And the morning was going to arrive regardless. At 9:47 that evening, the hotel's general manager, a man named Warren Cates, received a message from the director of corporate partnerships at a company called Ferris Vantage Group. The message was polite and factual. It described the events of the previous 2 hours. It noted the confirmation number, the technical error, and the nature of the front desk exchange. It mentioned the names of the staff involved. Warren Cates read the message twice. Then he opened his browser and searched Ferris Vantage Group. He sat with what he found for a long time. Ferris Vantage Group was not a particularly famous company in the way that consumer brands are famous. It didn't make a product that appeared on shelves. It didn't run advertisements during hockey games. What it did was build the infrastructure that other companies built their products on: data systems, security architecture, the invisible scaffolding of digital commerce. It had been founded 17 years ago by a woman who had grown up in Scarborough, had put herself through university on a combination of student loans and overnight cleaning shifts, and had built something from the kind of nothing that most people don't recover from. The company had annual revenues north of $2 billion. It employed, across its Canadian operations alone, over 4,000 people. It had been quietly shortlisted for a 10-year contract with a national hospitality consortium, a contract that would, among other things, provide the data and booking management infrastructure for 11 properties, including the Harrow Grand. Warren Cates called Philip W. at home at 10:15 that evening. The conversation was brief and not pleasant. By the following morning, the story had moved. It had not moved because Yolanda Ferris made any public statement. She had not spoken to anyone. She had gone up to her suite, reviewed her presentation deck, ordered room service, a bowl of soup and a pot of tea, and gone to bed at 11:30 because she had a 9 o'clock meeting and sleep was not optional. But her director of corporate partnerships had sent a message, and that message had been forwarded. And the person it was forwarded to had mentioned it to someone at a business publication that covered the technology sector. And by 7:30 in the morning, a reporter named Justine had 3 sources telling her the same story and a deadline at 9. The article ran at 8:43. Black tech executive denied check-in at Toronto luxury hotel despite valid reservation, source says. By 10 o'clock, it had been picked up by 2 national outlets. By noon, it was trending on social media in a way that had the Harrow Grand's communications team convening an emergency call. By 2 in the afternoon, 3 corporate accounts had posted statements expressing concern and announcing that they were reviewing their hotel partnerships. 2 of those accounts represented companies whose annual travel spend at the Harrow Grand collectively exceeded $600,000. The hospitality consortium called Warren Cates at 2:45. The call lasted 9 minutes. The Ferris Vantage contract discussion, which had been at the final evaluation stage, was suspended pending review of the hotel's internal practices and diversity standards. Warren Cates spent the rest of the afternoon in meetings that felt like sitting inside a fire. Yolanda's meeting at Holbrook Capital had gone well. She had presented the new infrastructure proposal calmly and completely, with the kind of precision that comes from having spent 17 years learning how to be the only person in the room who had prepared more than anyone expected. When she came out of the Holbrook building at 11:30 and checked her phone, her communications director had sent 14 messages, and her assistant, recovered enough to be back online, had sent 22. She scrolled through them standing on Bay Street, with the November wind coming off the lake. She thought about the lobby the night before. The marble floors, the pianist, the couple in resort wear receiving their welcome packet. The particular quality of the silence after she said, "I see," and walked away. She thought about Tamsin, 31 years old, working late, carrying a tablet, choosing to cross a lobby when she didn't have to. She called her assistant. "I need Tamsin Foley's contact information," she said. "She works events coordination at the Harrow Grand." and I need it before end of business. The communications director wanted a statement. The legal team wanted a review. 3 journalists had sent requests for interviews. A television morning show had sent a producer's note asking if she'd be willing to speak on camera. Yolanda declined all of it, not because she was afraid of the attention, because she understood something that most people in her position took years to learn, that the story was already telling itself, and adding her voice to it would only give the other side something to push against. She had said what she needed to say through the right channels. The rest was not her job. She did, however, write 2 emails. The first was to Warren Cates. It was 3 paragraphs long. It did not express anger. It described, in specific terms, what she had experienced and what she believed it reflected about the hotel's staff training and systems for identifying and addressing bias. It named the technical failure that had been the proximate cause. It also named the look on Philip's faces, not in those words, but in the words she had for it, which were precise and impossible to misread, and it named what Tamsin had done. She asked that it be considered in whatever review the hotel conducted. The second email was to Tamsin directly. It thanked her. It noted, briefly, that Ferris Vantage had recently opened a corporate events division and was building a team to manage partnerships and logistics across their operations. It said that if Tamsin was ever interested in a conversation about what that might look like, the door was open. It said that this was not a formal offer and carried no obligation. It was simply an observation from one person to another that the kind of instinct Tamsin had shown in the lobby the previous evening was not common, and that uncommon things were worth naming. Philip W. was placed on administrative review the following morning. The hotel's communications team released a statement that same afternoon acknowledging that a guest had experienced an unacceptable failure of service and that an internal review was underway. The statement did not use the word racism. The statement did use the words systemic and training and unacceptable in close proximity, which was notable for a corporate hotel that had historically preferred isolated incident. 2 weeks later, the Harrow Grand announced the appointment of an external consultant to conduct a full audit of its front desk practices, guest relations training, and diversity standards. The consultant's name was mentioned in a press release that few people read. What more people noticed was that the Harrow Grand's booking numbers for the following quarter had dropped 14% compared to the same period the prior year. Warren Cates gave an interview to a hospitality trade publication in which he said that the hotel took these matters seriously and was committed to doing better. He said this in the measured, calibrated tone of a man who has recently learned that calibration comes in different currencies. The story of what happened in the lobby of the Harrow Grand on a Tuesday evening in November eventually settled into the category of things that people reference when they are making a different point, in boardrooms, in conversations about corporate culture, in discussions about what it costs to make assumptions about who belongs where. Yolanda did not tell it often, not because it didn't matter, but because she had other things to do. The Holbrook proposal moved to the next stage. The events division hired its first 4 staff members. The company broke ground on a new data center outside Ottawa that February. She did think about it sometimes. Not about Warren Cates and his phone calls. Not about the 14% booking drop, or the press release, or the trade publication interview. Not even about the contract that got suspended, though that had consequences that lasted longer than the headlines. She thought about the armchair by the window that looked out over Lake Ontario. The way the water had been dark and completely still from that height, the lights of the city reflected in long vertical lines. She had sat in that chair for 20 minutes, while her assistant's husband gently woke her assistant, and her assistant found the confirmation number. And the pieces of the small administrative gap were slowly assembled. 20 minutes in which she had been absolutely certain, with the certainty of someone who has been in exactly this situation before, and recognizes it with the bone-deep familiarity of a recurring dream, that she was not going to be undone by it. Not because she had money, not because she had a contract on the table that the hotel needed, but because she had decided, a long time ago, in a cramped apartment in Scarborough, working through a problem at 2 in the morning, with a textbook she had borrowed from the university library because she couldn't afford to buy it, that she was not going to let other people's limitations become her ceiling. She had made that decision once. It had been enough. She had not needed to make it again. Tamsin Foley had the conversation with Ferris Vantage's corporate events division in December. She met with the division head, a careful, funny woman who asked very specific questions and laughed at exactly the right moments. The conversation lasted an hour and 40 minutes, which was longer than either of them had planned. In January, Tamsin gave 3 weeks' notice at the Harrow Grand. She thought about writing a longer explanation in her resignation letter. She thought about saying something specific about the evening in November and what it had shown her about where she was and where she might be. In the end, she wrote a single paragraph thanking her colleagues for 6 years of genuinely good work and wishing the hotel well. Some things don't need to be written down to be understood. She started at Ferris Vantage on the first Monday of February, in an office on the 23rd floor of a building in the financial district, with a window that on clear days looked all the way across the lake to where the sky and the water became the same color. On her first morning, she arrived 20 minutes early. She made coffee in the small kitchen near the elevator bank. She stood at the window and looked at the water. She thought about the lobby, the armchair, the woman in the gray wool coat who had sat down with her tote bag and her reading glasses and her phone and her absolute certainty, and had waited, without a word of complaint, for the situation to sort itself out the way she had always known it would. Not everyone would have waited like that. Not everyone could. Tamsin had watched it happen and understood something that was difficult to put into words, but that she had been carrying since November, turning it over in her mind the way you turn over a coin to see both sides. Dignity doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It simply remains, quiet and complete, in whatever room it happens to be standing in. The coffee finished brewing. The office began to fill. The day began.